Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 25 of the ES335 build, and in this episode we're going to finally get the fretboard finished off by fitting the binding to it. So stay tuned and I'll show you how I went about this. So for every other build I've ever done, this would have been the fretboard sort of completed, but this build once again is a little bit different because we're going to put some binding on it. But as I said in the last episode, I've never done this before, so I'm basing this on a little bit of research I've done on the internet, etc. And stuff that I've seen in other videos over the years. But I'm also going to be making it up as I go along, just a little bit. Now it only needs to be bound on three sides because of course we've got the nut on one end. But on this end, where the three pieces come together, I'm not going to mitre them. I'm just going to kind of butt joint them together. But as I'm going to be sticking this on with acetone, I'm kind of hoping that the acetone will melt all of those three bits together and I'll get a nice clean seam. If not, I'll always be able to fill it with a little bit of melted binding in some acetone, so shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just open up this binding. And I'm just going to very roughly cut three sections of it. Actually got plenty to spare. So as I said, I'm going to be sticking this on with acetone like I did for the body binding, but I'm going to be trying a slightly different technique on the fingerboard. And it's actually something that was passed down to me on the comment section. If you don't frequent the comment section on these videos, you really should have a look because there is some kind of very useful conversations. And it's always lovely just to find out who's watching these videos and say hello. I always answer all of the comments, except those ones for porn sites. I just delete them. But I can see why they'd want to put them on a channel with a 99.9% male viewership, but there you go. Right, back on task. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape this on, this little bit of binding, first. And if I read this post right, what it says is, tape it in position, leave gaps. And instead of putting this on with a brush, I've actually got an old syringe with one of the little really fine glue applicators that you can get for super glue. I'm just going to draw a little bit of acetone up into that. And what was suggested was you just apply the acetone to the gap and it will wick in, and then add more tape. So I'm just going to leave that to set up for a little while now, and then apparently if there's any gaps when we take it off, you can just apply a little bit of acetone to the gaps and then tape those down as you would otherwise, and it will give you a really good finish. Okay, so I've left that for about 15 minutes. It's actually given me a little bit of time to start a much needed tidy up in the shed. So I'm just going to peel this tape off and see how we've done. 15 minutes potentially might not have been long enough. However, that seems to be really well stuck. It's taken a bit of the colour out of the rosewood. But apart from that, it's looking good. So I'm going to trim that up and scrape it down and see how we've done, and then we can start looking at putting the two pieces onto the side. Okay, so that's worked quite nicely. I'm going to have to just refinish because I was scraping across the grain. It's kind of scraped it a little bit. Obviously when I do the sides I'll be going with the grain, so it'll be less of an issue. But it hasn't quite got all the little ends. They're still a little bit loose. So I'm just going to put a little bit more acetone into those ends and tape them back up again. And give it another 10 minutes. Okay, so this has had a little bit of time, and we'll see how we've done. Again, it's got a little bit of kind of staining from the rosewood. But that's absolutely solid. And I think we can see there that that has gone on absolutely beautifully. There's no visible seam whatsoever. Okay, now we can get on with doing the sides. Okay, so I'm going to start the process of applying the binding to the side simply by taping it in place. And I'm doing it so that the bottom is sort of flush with the bottom of the fretboard. And I'm just going to tape this in place at regular intervals, but leaving some fairly big gaps in between. And now with that taped in place, I'm going to rip up some bits of masking tape, and I'm going to start introducing some acetone in the gaps and then taping that down nice and securely. Okay, so we've left this for about 10 minutes, so we'll get the masking tape off and see how we've done. Okay, from what I can see, that has done an absolutely amazing job, even in the bits that were initially taped down before I applied the acetone. So really pleased with the way that's gone actually. Okay, so there's only one thing for it now I suppose, and that's to start cleaning this up. So we'll just start off by snipping off the obvious bits that need to go. Now it's gone down really nicely on the underneath, and it is all pretty much level with the bottom of the fretboard, so that's really good. Happy with that. So next up I suppose is to figure out a way of actually cleaning up all this excess material. So I'm just going to bring you in a bit closer now, and we can start to have a look at how we might start to clear this excess material away and get these finished off nicely. So hopefully you can see there that this has gone on really nicely. It's made a little bit of a mess. There's a lot of brown staining on it at the moment, but that will all come off when we clean it up. And what I intend to do is I'm going to take this little chisel. It's not one of my good chisels. It's a bit of a beater, but it is very sharp. I'm just going to use this, and in the first instance I'm just going to kind of cut down next to the fret. Without cutting into the fretboard itself, and then I'm just going to very gently work this binding down. And the reason I'm not using a good chisel is because I'm obviously at some point or other going to hit this fret. And with that done, I'm then going to take the little razor blade and I'm just going to scrape that until it's level. So I need to repeat that process at every fret position, which is going to take an absolute age. And then once we're at that stage, we can look to do the final cleaning up on the nibs. Okay, so there's the bulk of the waste removed on those nibs. And if I just get a kind of a closer shot, you can see that we're part of the way there with this, but there's still a lot of cleaning up to do. The nibs are very square still. So what I intend to do is to just take a little tiny diamond file and I'm just going to work those nibs from the square profile and just match it to the profile of the fret. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm not going to damage all the work I did in getting this fretboard so nice and shiny. So I'm going to tape off the frets as best as I can. Get my big eyes on. And start to get these tidied up. Okay, so I'm about 3/4 of the way down the first side of this, and it is taking a very long time to do. And I would imagine there's only one thing more dull than doing this work, and that's to actually watch someone else doing it. So I'm going to turn the camera off now, and I'm going to complete the rest of this off camera, and I'll bring you back and show you where we're at with it. Okay, you can see there's the finished nibs. I think they're actually looking quite nice at the moment. There's still a little bit of finishing off to do on some of them, just a bit of a tidy up with some very fine sandpaper. But I'm really pleased with the way that they've come out. It's taken a long time. It's probably taken me 3 hours in total to trim and shape these nibs. I'm not sure I'd ever do it again, but I'm happy with these, so that's all good. And before I go, if anyone's wondering how that little repair that I did onto this markers turned out, is actually there. I don't know how well you can see that, but this is the closest up and best I'm able to photograph it, and if we can't pick it out in this shot, I think we can say we've done a fairly good job of it. And there we have the pretty much completed fretboard. I'm really pleased with it. It has come out really nice. There are a couple of little repairs that I'm going to have to do where I've just kind of marked the finish a little bit, but I think that's always to be expected when you're doing that amount of work on something, so I'm not too concerned about that. But with this done, we're now ready to move on to the next stage, which is to actually start on the neck proper. But that's going to be for next week, so I'm going to leave this one here. So as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.